we're gonna start here because it was almost getting late. Gospel music. If you didn't, if you didn't listen to the words, you might not realize the difference between early rock and roll and gospel. Singers sang loudly and with lots of feeling. They might get so swept up in the moment they would scream. But gospel is special religious music. It grew out of black church choirs in the early 1900s, where I wasn't born in the 1900s. As a boy, Elvis grew to love gospel music from his Sunday church visits. He heard famous gospel singers such as Sister Rosetta, I love Rosetta, such as Sister Rosetta Tharpe when he was growing up. Even after Elvis became a rock star, he sometimes recorded gospel songs. He won a Grammy Award for his 1967 record, How Great Thou Art. How Grateful Art. Chapter 3, Sun Studios. Elvis went to Sun Studios with his beat-up guitar. The song he chose to sing, My Happiness, had been popular a few years earlier. It was a soft ballad that his mother loved. A nice woman named Marion Kasker ran Sun Records with Mr. Phillips. From behind her desk, she asked Elvis what kind of music he sang. I sing all kinds, he told her. Who do you sound like? She asked. I don't sound like nobody, Elvis told her. Elvis recorded My Happiness. Mrs. Kasker printed his name out and pasted it onto the record. Elvis left, but he came back. In fact, Elvis kept on visiting Sun. Mr. Phillips was always too busy to talk with him. Mrs. Kasker, though, loved to chat with the handsome boy who had the voice of an angel. My face is itching. Goodness me. Elvis had... Where was I? Yeah, here. Elvis had graduated high school by this time. It was 12th grade, the last and final grade of high school this year. But it's on my future, in year 2028, when I become 18. I can graduate that school also. Like a lot of people he knew, he didn't plan on going to college. Instead, he got a job at a machine shop, and he sang. Elvis kept going to all-night gospel sing-alongs. He listened to the radio so he could learn how to play more songs. One night, Elvis heard about a band looking for a singer. This could be his big break. He got a special haircut and wore a pink shirt for the tryout. I love pink shirts. Pink shirts are my favorite, and I love the color pink. Elvis sang only 2 songs. A friend of his watched. Afterward, he told Elvis, You're never going to make it as a singer. If only he knew. One day in the summer of 1954, Mrs. Kasker called Elvis. Mr. Phillips had a song that might be right for Elvis. Could Elvis get down to the studio that afternoon? Of course he could. But it turned out that Mr. Phillips didn't like how Elvis sang the song. He asked Elvis if he knew any others. Sure he did. Elvis sang every song he knew. Then he sang parts of songs he knew. Mr. Phillips stopped the recording and just sat in the recording booth listening. He knew this kid didn't have experience. He knew Elvis needed training. But Mr. Phillips also knew that Elvis had something very special. Mr. Phillips told a local guitar player about Elvis. His name was Scotty Moore, and he wanted to hear Elvis. But when he called, Elvis wasn't home. That didn't stop Gladys. She rushed to the movie theater where Elvis was to tell him the news. A few days later, Elvis went over to Scotty's house. Scotty thought the boy looked a little crazy. Elvis was wearing pink pants. I love the pink pants, and I love that color too. White shoes and a black shirt. Black's my favorite color, including white. And his hair was greased up in a style called a ducktail. Similar to the show called DuckTales, but not the show that I watch on Disney Plus. But anyways, let's go. Scotty introduced Elvis to his friend Bill, who played bass guitar. A regular guitar has 6 strings. A bass has only 4 and makes a deeper sound. Elvis played every song he knew. Most of the songs were slow ballads. Neither Scotty nor Bill was impressed, but they agreed to go into the studio with Elvis the next night. At Sun Studios, with the other 2 musicians, Elvis sang, "I love you because," every which way. Sometimes he let his voice go high, sometimes low. Sometimes he whistled during it. Sometimes he didn't. Unfortunately, Mr. Phillips wasn't happy with any of these recordings. He told everybody to take a break. The 2 guitars got sodas, but Elvis kept fiddling with his guitar. Did it with my eyes closed. All of a sudden, he started playing an old blues song. It was called "That's All Right, Mama." Did it with my eyes closed. As he sang, Elvis started dancing and jumping around the room. The guitarists heard Elvis and liked what he was doing. They put down their sodas and started to play along. At last, Mr. Phillips was hearing something he liked. When everybody in the studio listened to the recording, they were amazed. It was loud and electric and different. Mr. Phillips called the local radio station and asked the disc jockey to put on the record. When "That's All Right, Mama" played the next night, Gladys and Vernon were standing close to the radio so they could really listen to their son. Others must have really listened too, because more than 100 people called the radio station to play that song again. It wasn't long before Elvis, Scotty, and the bass player began appearing at local concerts. People loved to hear Elvis sing, but they loved to watch him too. He was so handsome, and when he shook his hips, girls went wild. At the end of one show, Elvis joked with his fans, saying, "Girls, I'll see you backstage." That was all they needed to hear. Screaming girls pushed through an open window into his dressing room. They tore off his shirt and boots and tried to yank off his pants, which isn't very nice after all. Elvis held on tight. Only a few months before, Elvis was driving a truck to make money. That night, he started to feel like a star. Acoustic and electric guitars. They each have 6 strings, but there's a big difference between. They each have 6 strings, but there's a big difference between acoustic and electric guitars. An acoustic guitar has a hollow body and a sound hole. That's the circle under the part you strum when you pluck the string. The sound vibrates off them and into the hollow body through that hole. Electric guitars work differently. Instead of a hollow body, most electric guitars are full of wires to transmit sounds. A pluck of strings goes through a cord into a speaker. This makes the guitar loud enough to be heard by somebody standing in the back row of a giant stadium. Elvis usually played an acoustic guitar. You can hear him strum on "Blue Moon of Kentucky." Scotty Moore, his guitarist in the Sun Studios years, played electric guitar using an amplifier. more often added an echo effect to his guitar. Moore became famous for that reverb sound, not the reversed sound, you know. Chapter 4. Colonel Tom Parker. Girls weren't the only ones interested in watching Elvis. A man named Colonel Tom Parker also took note. Colonel Parker wasn't actually a colonel. He had once been in the army, but he was not an officer, and he dropped out to join the circus, just like how we drop classes every school year. Parker thought Colonel made him sound important. Parker couldn't sing or play an instrument. He was a businessman who managed country singer hanged snow. Not the snow you play in. It was about when we dropped classes for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. So back. Colonel Parker had big plans for Elvis. When they met, he told the young singer that playing small concerts near his home wasn't good enough. He should be touring the country. Elvis should appear on television shows and star in movies. With his looks and style, Elvis could be bigger than anyone before him. There was one problem. Elvis already had a manager. His name was Bob Neal. Bob was friendly and hardworking. He got Elvis a regular spot on the Louisiana Hayride, a popular concert series on the radio. He also helped Elvis make business deals with Mr. Phillips at Sun Studios. But that didn't stop Parker. He was pushy. Parker knew Elvis needed him. Sun was too small. Bob Neal was too small, and Elvis was going to be big. Famous record companies should be recording his music. That was the way to get big hits heard all across the country. Mr. Phillips knew all of this too, but he didn't like Parker, and he didn't want to let Elvis go. Vernon wanted Elvis to sign with Parker. The talk of movies and big record deals impressed Elvis's father. But Gladys had her doubts. She hardly knew this Colonel Parker, and he wasn't easy to like. Parker smoked big cigars that stank up their home, which isn't very good because smoking's dangerous. He was older than Vernon. He was blunt, saying whatever he wanted, even if it made people feel bad. He only seemed to care about money. That means you're arrogant and vain. You're proud of yourself, and you only care about yourself. And you're also proud of your fangs, which is very boastful and rude. Gladys worried about girls running after her son, tearing at his clothes. Would he be happy spending most nights on a bus, traveling from concert to concert? Well, Gladys wanted him to settle down and start a family. Oh dear. Elvis adored his mama. Still, he ended up doing what his father wanted. In August of 1955, I wasn't born in 1955, but let's continue. Colonel Parker became special advisor to Elvis, and sure enough, a few months later, Parker got RCA Records to buy Elvis's contract with Sun. RCA paid $35,000. That was more money than any other record company had ever paid for a singer. Some people at RCA worried that Elvis would be a flop. Maybe they had made a big mistake. They had nothing to worry about. Chapter 5. Hound Dog. Elvis's first song for RCA was about a man whose girlfriend had broken up with him. Oh dear, that wasn't nice, huh? Well, the song was slow and depressing, but Elvis sang it his way. His voice was low and quiet in parts. At other times, he shouted. The sound was raw and full of feeling. Unlike other rock songs, it wasn't fast or easy to dance to. People liked it anyway. Heartbreak Hotel soon came to be the most popular song in the country. That's how Elvis started That's how 1956 started for Elvis. He was just 21, but he was about to change music forever. Fame was going to change his life too. After Heartbreak Hotel, Elvis had money, lots of money. He bought Gladys a pink Cadillac and a new house for the Presleys with a swimming pool. Why did Elvis get so popular so fast? I love pink Cadillacs, and the pink color is my favorite color too. And you see the big swimming pool and the big car too? Television helped. Back in those days, there were only a few channels and a few popular shows. When Elvis appeared on TV, people couldn't believe what they were seeing. Popular singers didn't wear tight jeans and tight shirts. Nobody else had a great ducktail. Elvis got swept up in the music as he sang. His knees would shake. He'd curl his lip in a sneer. Then he'd smile a little and shut his eyes. He'd also move his hips back and forth. Grown-ups thought this was dirty dancing. People started to call him Elvis the Pelvis. They didn't want their kids to watch Elvis or to dress like him. Mrs. Presley had no discernible singing ability, the New York Times wrote. Another newspaper had a headline that read, "Beware Elvis Presley. What people said hurt Elvis. He wasn't wild. He still lived with his mom and dad. He just wanted to sing and make people happy." He still wanted to make people happy. He just wanted to sing and make people happy. "I don't do any vulgar movements," Elvis said to reporters. "It's just my way of expressing how I feel." Steve Allen, a famous TV host, had Elvis wear a tuxedo on his show. He told Elvis not to shake his hips. Instead, Allen had Elvis sing his song, Hound Dog, to a basset hound also wearing a tuxedo. The Ed Sullivan Show was a popular Sunday night show. When Elvis came on, the cameras showed him only from the waist up. If he wiggled his hips or shook his legs, the viewers wouldn't see it. In the end, it didn't matter what grown-ups thought of Elvis. The time was right for Elvis Presley. The times were worse for The time was right for Elvis Presley. This was the late 1950s. Some young people were starting to rebel against their parents. Rock and roll was their music. Frank Sinatra was their parents' singer. Elvis was theirs. After Heartbreak Hotel, the hits kept coming. Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel went straight to #1. Elvis Presley didn't create rock and roll. Bill Haley had a big hit, Rock Around the Clock. Chuck Berry, famous of his duck walk across the stage, sang Johnny B. Good. I love Berry. And Jerry Lee Lewis, who sometimes kicked away his piano bench when he played, was another rock and roll star. But Elvis, with his looks and voice, was much bigger than anyone else. For Colonel Parker, Elvis still wasn't big enough. He wanted Elvis to be king, and to do that, Elvis needed to be in the movies. Chapter 6, Movie Star. Once again, Elvis's timing was right. The young actor, James Dean, had died in a car accident in 1955, which isn't good after all. Elvis was a great fan of Dean's. He had seen Rebel Without a Cause more than 40 times. James Dean and Elvis Presley were both young, handsome, and let's not read that word. Sexy. Were both young, handsome, and sexy. Movie producers were desperate to find the next James Dean. They thought Elvis might do the trick. Elvis signed a deal with a big Hollywood movie studio in 1956. He arrived on the set of Love Me Tender, similar to Thomas and Friends' Love Me Tender. It took place during the Civil War. Elvis played a singing farm boy. Most critics didn't like Love Me Tender. Elvis didn't know the first thing about acting. How could he about acting? How could he? He'd never done it before. They also thought it was silly for his character to sing in the middle of scene. Colonel Parker didn't care about the critics. Neither did fans. Love Me Tender was a big hit. Elvis's fans filled up theaters, many fans seeing the movie again and again. The movie people were excited. Here was their new James Dean. They were willing to pay a lot of money to keep. They were willing to pay a lot of money to keep Elvis Presley. Before long, Elvis was making one movie after another. He made 31 between 1956 and 1969. Making movies kept Elvis so busy he barely had time to record music. Excuse me. He certainly didn't have time for concerts. Colonel Parker didn't mind. Why did Elvis need to tour? His records sold it even if he didn't appear before an audience. In 1957, Elvis bought a mansion in Memphis. He called it Graceland. He planned for the whole family to live there, but in less than a year, something happened. Elvis was drafted. Today, people decide whether to join the armed forces, but before 1973, men had no choice. They had to serve. Women were not drafted. Not even Elvis Presley could avoid the draft, and even Elvis had to get an army crew cut. Before and after, photos of Elvis made newspapers headlines all over the country. Elvis was no longer a rock star. He was Private Elvis Presley. Then something terrible happened. Gladys became very sick. She couldn't eat anything and had to go into the hospital. Elvis kept her pink Cadillac parked right outside her window so she could see it from bed. Elvis was allowed to come home to visit her. For a while, Gladys seemed better. Then in the middle of the night, the doctors called Elvis. He rushed off to the hospital, but his mother had died before he got there. It was the biggest loss of his life. Gladys hadn't just been his mother. She was his best friend, the person closest to him in the whole world. The next morning, Elvis sat up. Elvis sat on the front step. The next morning, Elvis sat on the front step of his beautiful new house and cried. But because he was Elvis, there was no privacy. Photographers snapped pictures of him weeping into hands. Let's pause there.